Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores a goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. This is episode 2 for me, episode 1 for the whole podcast. And I love the Friday shows. The Friday shows are always going to be a lot of fun because we have things to preview on the weekend. We get to look forward to something, and then on Monday, obviously, recap the weekend. And then we've got news all across the soccer world to dive into, injuries, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, there was so much news today, I wish we almost had a 2-hour show because we would have been able to fit it all in. Alexander Nubel, he's got a 15-game clause for Bayern Munich. Is Manuel Neuer going to sign the extension to 2021? That's something we won't be able to get into on the show today, unfortunately, but that's just some of the most interesting news that I've heard as a Bayern Munich supporter, because Manuel Neuer is only 33, and goalkeepers can play a long, long time. We've seen that time and time again. Casillas, obviously, around 37, 38. Gigi Buffon still kicking it and kicked it all the way to 40. We'll see how long he goes, right? So goalkeeper is a position you can play at a very, very old age, especially in soccer terms, right? 33, 34 might not be so old in other sports, but in soccer, for most positions, you're starting to get into ancient territory, except for the goalkeeper position. So it's interesting that Bayern has elected to bring in a 23-year-old and guaranteed him 15 matches when they have arguably the greatest German goalkeeper of all time, and Manuel Neuer currently on the roster. We're going to dive in the Atletico Madrid FC Barcelona showdown in the Saudi Arabia Cup. I don't like the country it's in, but it was such an exciting match that I do want to touch on that one and preview the final a bit between Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, and what does that mean for La Liga moving forward. But where I wanted to start on the show today is some injury news, because we've got 2 big injury news, both from the Premier League. One also involves the United States men's national team, which I will be covering a ton on this show, right? The United States men's national team going through a really important qualifying stage. This is a crucial time in the United States men's national team's development, and they're the most interesting national team to talk about when it's not a World Cup year. So we'll be all over that all year long. So let's go ahead and start there, because the star, the big man, the face of American soccer has suffered another injury. Christian Pulisic will be out a significant amount of time with what was quoted as a nasty injury. And this is just tough for Chelsea because the young player was really starting to come into form for them. And also it's tough for the United States to see Pulisic with an injury again. And this is something we've consistently seen from the attacking player Pulisic. Just time and time again, he finds himself hurt. And that makes me want to ask the question, and I think it's a fair question: is Christian Pulisic injury prone? And that's something that is a huge red flag. If you listen to the last show, I said that if everything went absolutely perfect for the United States, they would have an opportunity to compete for and potentially win the World Cup in 2026. You can laugh at that if you want, but I'm serious with the type of young talent they have. But the one thing that will derail that is consistent injuries to these new star players, specifically the star player, the number 10 for the United States, Christian Pulisic. So I could really care less how this affects Chelsea. They will finish in a Champions League spot, most likely. They won't win the Premier League this year unless Liverpool decides to forfeit the rest of the matches for the rest of the year. So it doesn't really affect Chelsea moving forward. Perhaps in the Champions League, but I didn't think they were going to win that tournament anyway. And even with Pulisic, they are going to struggle to beat Bayern Munich, at least in my opinion, and according to 538's metrics, in the round of 16. So it's not really a Chelsea story. It's a United States men's national team story, especially with 60% of the qualifying matches for the 2022 World Cup taking place this year. So Christian Pulisic being fully healthy is crucial for the United States to try to get into, because it's not about whether they're going to qualify for the World Cup. It's trying to make sure you're in the right pot for the World Cup draw. You have to be higher ratings in your federation so that you're in a better pot for the draw. And if you're in a better pot for the draw, you'll have an easier group to play in instead of a more difficult group. If you're in one of the last pots, you might end up with, Lord knows, maybe Germany and England in the same group, and you have to be one of the best two teams coming out of there. And don't think the Germans are going to miss a knockout stage again in the World Cup. That might be the last time in the history of soccer they don't advance past the group stage in a World Cup. They will come back with an absolute fire in their belly, and I expect that in the European Championships this summer as well. The other big injury I wanted to talk to before we talk to that, remind you, follow us on all the social media platforms at GSMC_soccer on Twitter, GSMC Soccer on Facebook. Find us, follow us, like our page, rate and subscribe, and leave a review on all the podcast sites where you consume your favorite podcasts. That helps us. And follow me on Twitter at @MoreLucas. The other bit of injury news, and this is big injury news in the world of soccer, Harry Kane will be out till April. We knew he suffered an injury. We didn't know how long he'd be out, if it would affect the Champions League run potentially for Tottenham, and it will. He will be out till April. And to me, this is just a really tough pill to swallow again for Spurs. And we've seen Harry Kane miss time. He feels like the central part of that team. They've survived the long stretches without Harry Kane, but there's no way you can say that you're a better club, you're a better team without Harry Kane up front. I mean, he's just that excellent of a player. He's been the driving force of Tottenham, although they haven't been performing at the highest levels this year. He is necessary for their success moving forward, and it's just such a shame that we get this injury now. We get this injury news now before the huge match tomorrow on Saturday, and if you're listening to this on Saturday today, where Tottenham plays Liverpool. Jose Mourinho trying to play spoiler now without his favorite striker. That's a really difficult pill to swallow, and it's just tough to see Harry Kane out all the way until April. Brutal pill to swallow for Tottenham Hotspur. But potentially, is this going to help the Spurs? Not long term, but maybe short term. There's a small potential this could help Tottenham Hotspur pull that upset and end the undefeated run for Liverpool. I'm not saying they'll do it, but I'm saying that there is a small chance that the Harry Kane injury could help Tottenham against Liverpool. We will preview that entire matchup and so much more coming up next. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, time to dive into the game of the weekend. Any league, you can maybe make an argument Real Madrid-Sevilla affects that league a little bit more in terms of who will win La Liga. This one shouldn't affect who's going to win the Premier League because Liverpool is so far clear of the field. I mean, Jurgen Klopp and his boys have been excellent at the top of the Premier League. 58 points for Liverpool, currently 13 clear of Leicester City, 14 clear of Manchester City. We've got an interesting adjusted table if you take out VAR from the equation to look at a little bit later in the show. That'll be an interesting discussion point moving forward. But Liverpool is so far clear, so far clearly the best team in the Premier League, and they just have so many points in tow. It's going to be near impossible to catch them. And if Liverpool blows a 13 to 14 point lead, they had it in January. If Liverpool aren't champions of the Premier League, it'll be the worst collapse in sports of the year, for sure. And for Liverpool fans, it'll be the hardest pills to swallow because think about this. If they blow the lead in the Premier League, they will have back-to-back seasons of this. The third highest point total in Premier League history. They don't win the league. Haven't won the league since 1990. So 97 points, don't win the league. Lose it by 1 point to Manchester City. Then the next year, you're undefeated over halfway through the season, and then you blow the lead? That would be a disaster of all disasters. It's something that is only 1% chance to happen, but a disaster of all disasters. So what makes this game so interesting? It's because Liverpool hasn't lost. And it's a huge story that we only have 2 teams in Premier League history that have been able to complete a perfect run. Only one team in the modern era, 2003 and 4 Arsenal. We remember that run. And so it's intriguing. Can they compete for and complete a perfect season? And that means every time there's a team that's closer to the upper halves of the table, like Tottenham Hotspur currently sitting in 6th place, just 1 point behind Manchester United, but a whole 28 points behind Liverpool. It's crazy, the gap there between just the 6th place and the 1st place team in the Premier League. But every time there's a team in the upper half of the table, every time there's a team with good name recognition, with a famous manager in Jose Mourinho, and a really talented roster, which we know the Spurs have, every time that matchup will happen for the rest of the season, it's going to be the game of the weekend. Because a team pursuing an undefeated season in any sport, even a soccer season even more so, is going to be the most intriguing matchup of the weekend. Now, we mentioned that Harry Kane was going to be missing from the matchup between Tottenham and Liverpool. And there is a really small argument that I've seen made and I agree with, that maybe, just maybe, missing a star player like Harry Kane could help you win just one match against Liverpool. And here are the reasons why. So with Harry Kane out there, Jose Mourinho is a pretty confident guy. And if you have Harry Kane up front, you can make an argument you might have the most talented, if not the second or third most talented player on the pitch. You can make an argument that your midfield can compete with Liverpool, and yes, they're playing really well as a team right now, but Jose Mourinho can make an argument to himself that they are not that far away. And with Harry Kane out there, I think they would play Liverpool almost straight up. But now you remove Harry Kane from the equation, it's going to force Mourinho to sit down at his desk and say, how do we win this without Harry Kane? Well, I think this should have been their strategy with Harry Kane, but removing Harry Kane is going to force Mourinho to muddy this one up. Park the bus, sit back, dig deep for chances, understand you're a large underdog, and just try to go out there and grab a win. Dirty up the game. Not necessarily play dirty, but you muddy it up. You play more on your side of the pitch. You wait for your counterattacking opportunities. You just try to not get blown off the pitch in the first half. You stay in the game. You hope for a free kick in your advantage. You hope to execute on your set pieces. You just hope for goals to go your way. We see underdogs play like this all the time. It's not how I think Tottenham would have played with Harry Kane in the lineup. But now Harry Kane's removed. I think it actually improves Tottenham's chances for a win tomorrow. I really do. I think it improves it slightly, but I still put it at about only a 21% chance that they go out there and get a win. I just don't see it happening. I think Liverpool is rolling on all cylinders, not just rolling individually, not just rolling in the managership, not just rolling off field, new deal with Nike coming for Liverpool, but they're a team. They really play together. And this is something that the more I've sat and I've looked at great teams from the past, especially World Cup championship teams, individual talent is highly overrated in this sport. We treat soccer stars like NBA stars. We believe that they affect the game, the results of the game, just as much as a LeBron James affects it in basketball. But in football, right, in American football, it's the same amount of players on the field, offense and defense, as in soccer. So I think that instead of treating a lot of soccer superstars as NBA superstars, to where Harry Kane carries Tottenham Hotspur, the way LeBron James carries the Lakers, or James Harden carries the Houston Rockets, or Michael Jordan carried the Bulls in the 90s, so on and so forth. Instead of thinking of them like that, we need to look at what Liverpool has done, which they are a complete unit that has this beautiful German machine-like mentality, and they're ready to play. And I think the German national team, and we mentioned Jurgen Klopp, who managed at Dortmund, who managed a couple of the players that ended up on that German national team that won the World Cup in 2014, Mario Götze at the top of that list, who scored the game-winning goal. Let's look at the difference between the 2014 German team and the 2018 German team. When you look at roster, when you look at talent, the 2018 squad was better. Everybody that was young and really good got older, got more experienced. They felt like a more talented team. A couple more players with real high-level international success. The same manager returning. But they got in their heads. They came a little cocky. We're the Germans. We're the defending world champions. We won in 2014. And they became more of a team of individuals instead of a team, which goes against completely what the German National Federation has been building up since 1954 when they were allowed back in the world stage international soccer, which is that time and time again, the Germans might be outclassed by individuals on the opposite team. Diego Maradona at the top of the list, Lionel Messi in 2014. You can go through a whole bunch of players that were individually better. And most teams had 3 or 4 players that were individually better than the individuals on the German team. But as a team, as the German machine, the Germans were unbelievably unstoppable because they played as a unit. They played their style. Everybody knew their role and starred within it. And Jurgen Klopp has taken this identity that worked in 2014 for the German national team and worked for his Dortmund teams at the beginning of the decade. And this is why he was so eager to sell his superstars when he played for Borussia Dortmund. He had no time for over-the-top star players. And if you wanted to leave for big money and go play at Bayern Munich, be my guest, is what Jurgen Klopp said. And he's taken that attitude and he's gotten the talent at a high level because Liverpool absolutely filled with talented players. He's taken that talent and he's added this German level of do your job, do it to perfection, fulfill your role. And that's what's made Liverpool absolutely unstoppable at the top of the Premier League for the last 2 years. It's why they won the Champions League. Because they took the individual talent that we often see in the Premier League. Time and time again, we see the Premier League squads have the highest paid and most talented players in world soccer. It's the most popular soccer league in the world and one of the 2 or 3 most popular sports leagues in the world. He's taken that individual talent, that high-priced players, and he's brought in this team mentality to it that we really haven't seen in the Premier League in a very, very long time. A team mentality that maybe you saw from Leicester City when they made the run and won the Premier League. You know, Jamie Vardy starring, but really what else? And I'm hoping that this will catch on across soccer. And I'm hoping that it catches on for Tottenham Hotspur this weekend so we can see a really competitive and challenging match for Liverpool because it is fun to watch them win week after week. But it's not fun if they're just going to blow everybody off the pitch. So I want to see an exciting match from Tottenham Hotspur. Challenge them, play team style, play your role, muddy the game up, score on counterattacks and set pieces, and maybe, just maybe, you can sneak out of there with a win. That would be awfully exciting to see. And I'm just so excited for the match this weekend. And I just love the strategy of Jurgen Klopp's team is called the Gegenpress because it's German. I really do think the Germans play the best style of soccer for winning. Not necessarily the prettiest, not necessarily the most, fancy or popular style of soccer, but I really do think the German style of pressing high, filling space, working as a team, and sharp, quick passes to attack defenses while they're lax is just the most beautiful way to play soccer. And watching the German national team in 2014, they played that way beautifully. 2018, not so much the case because they weren't a team. They were a team of stars, right? Guys who had won the World Cup, felt like they'd already done it, didn't need to try, didn't need to fulfill their role, and that's why that team failed. And that's why Liverpool currently is succeeding beyond all expectations. All expectations. currently in the Premier League. But they've been assisted by a modern piece of technology. VAR is highly controversial in the Premier League. A couple weeks ago, there was just an absolute disaster over the weekend. It's consistently made the headlines this year in the Premier League, and that means I want to touch on it a little bit more. We had a really interesting article come out from ESPN. Dale Johnson wrote it. We will dive into that article. It dives into the anti-VAR table. So what if VAR did not exist in the Premier League, a la a couple years ago, or the entire time we've been watching soccer? How would the table look? How much has VAR affected the Premier League table? The results will really surprise you. We come with that on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Big welcome back to the GSMC Soccer Podcast. Just talked Liverpool, Tottenham, an exciting matchup this Saturday. Not necessarily important for the Premier League. If Tottenham grabbed a win from Liverpool, it would really not tighten up the table whatsoever. And Liverpool is going to have the bottom of the table to beat up on to get the requisite points to win the league. But an interesting match to see. Can Liverpool be beaten? And we're excited for it. And I think no Harry Kane might actually help there. Give us a follow, GSMC_soccer. On Twitter, the GSMC Soccer Facebook page. Great places to find posts of our podcast, recent episodes, all that fun stuff. Give us a like, rate, review on iTunes, rate, review wherever you get your podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. And give me a follow on Twitter, @MoreLucas. Whole bunch of other sports stuff on there. If you're interested in the College Football National Championship, I'm sure I'll be talking about that quite a bit on Monday. That'll be awfully exciting in the realm of American football. But let's talk about this VAR thing. VAR in the Premier League has been a real issue. And, to me, before we even dive into this anti-VAR table and how the league would look without it there, I want to first state that any fan of a team other than Liverpool that's trying to use this as a valid argument for why you're getting absolutely schooled currently by Liverpool, I just don't really accept it, because it is what it is. It's the rule that exists, and you need to play better within that scope of how the rules exist. I don't think using any rule as an excuse for why you're so far behind a team at the top of the table is a valid one. So I want to make that clear. Any fan that uses this argument to try to discredit what Liverpool has done, it's a bad argument. Any reporter that tries to use it to discredit what Liverpool has done, it's a bad argument. And it's a bad argument to try to make excuses for Manchester City. They've had 5 points taken away from them by VAR. Norwich City, the only team higher, 6 points taken away by VAR. Still doesn't matter. Play better within those matches so that VAR didn't matter. That's just the bottom line. And how it is across sports, it is what I'll always say, a referee, a rule will never decide it, because 90% of the game, even when an official affects a lot of it, 90% of matches, 90% of games in any sport is decided by the play on the field. Bottom line. Play on the field, bottom line. I say all that to then dive into this. This anti-VAR table. It looks really, really interesting. And it's frankly one of the more interesting things I've seen. So ESPN helped do this. Dr. Thomas Curran at the London School of Economics compiled the anti-VAR index, which shows how the Premier League would look if VAR decisions were removed from games. So if the call on the field stood every time. But they're not just removing goals here to get the amended results because that's too simplistic. They've developed an algorithm that takes into account many factors such as the state of the game at the point, form, performance, and relative strength, and then a whole set of results based on probability to spit out this table. So it's not necessarily straight, just remove the VAR and then see what happens. They added a bit of nuance to it. I like nuances in tables. I think it's an important thing to have when you run statistics. So here is the anti-VAR table. So first I want to remind you we'll do the top 4 in the Premier League right now. Liverpool at the top, 58 points. Leicester City, 45. Manchester City, 44. And Chelsea coming in at 36. And then it's a 5-point drop down to Manchester United at 31 points. The old Manchester United. We dove into that last week, how we shouldn't consider them an elite team anymore. Here's what the table would look like anti-VAR. Liverpool would still be at the top, but only 7 points clear of Manchester City. And then Leicester City would fall all the way back to 42 points, so they'd be 7 points behind Man City. And then Chelsea would be at 36 points at 4. And then actually, Wolverhampton would come in at 5th at 34, Sheffield United at 32, Arsenal at 30, Tottenham all the way down at 8th with 29, Manchester United with 29, and the bottom of the table looks somewhat similar, but the top is so interesting. Manchester City gets much closer, much farther away from the third-place team, Leicester, and Liverpool is only 7 points clear, which would mean if Tottenham somehow pulled an upset this weekend, that really changes the table. This makes it from impossible comeback to really, really possible that Liverpool somehow blows it, especially because they're Liverpool, throughout the year. And I think this was just absolutely fascinating to take a look at. And it again brings up the question of should VAR necessarily ever have been created or should it exist? I think the principle of trying to get every single call right is a principle that I'm not afraid of. You know, I think it's a good thing to try to get every call right on the field. But I think we have to remember that this isn't law. We're not putting people in jail. We're not sending people overseas. We're not making decisions about whether people should fight or not fight or, breathtaking decisions. We're not deciding who gets the bed in the divorce, right? We don't have to get everything right here. This is sports. This is entertainment. And that's the bottom line. Sports and entertainment. Is entertainment necessarily always perfect? No. Does it need to be always perfect and always right? No. In fact, it's almost more intriguing when it's a little bit wrong, when there's human error involved. So I think the attempt by VAR to get the letter of the law correct is valiant. I think it's an encouraging thing to see that we're trying to get everything right. But I'm afraid that in sports in general, and I'll have a solution to this on the other side of the next break, but in sports in general, we are focusing too much. We're letting the nerds take over. And this is really, I'm a nerd too. I love numbers. I consider myself in this class, the analytics group, all those things. I definitely consider myself one of those, right? But since the Moneyball era in baseball, it's transferred to all sports all across the world. In fact, I'd make an argument Billy Beane might be the most influential general manager, not just in Major League Baseball, but in all of sports. Because this range of analytics, the athletics being totally outspent in Major League Baseball, has allowed leagues across the world to embrace numbers, to embrace analytics. And it's really changed everything. But the nerds have taken over so much that we become too analytical. We become too math heavy. We want to get everything right. We're focusing on the letter of the law in all sports, and it applies equally in the beautiful game, in VAR. We're trying to get it exactly right. Was his armpit in an offside position? That's what the question people are asking. And that's great. And I love the effort. But I'm more about the spirit of the game. And this really comes from me covering high school athletics here in the United States. Because there is no replay in high school athletics. But people can fall in love with it. People can have passion for it. They can really have enjoyed the match they just watched, the game they just watched, even if there was a major mistake by an official. In fact, they let the mistake go so much more often because it isn't so highly scrutinized, and they know the call that's made is the call that's made. And the officials know that as well. So then they kind of almost make up the calls in some way to keep the spirit of the game. Maybe it was a bad charge call, right? Maybe he was a bit offside. Well, maybe I'll pay him back on the other side, right? This is the spirit of the game. This is the unseen thing that exists in sports that numbers will never be able to compute. And if we get too number heavy, if we get too analytical, we will take away the spirit of all this stuff, right? The spirit of the game. I'm not in favor of removing VAR altogether. Not at all. But I do have a really interesting solution, not just in soccer, but in all sports, for fixing this replay disaster, especially with the advent of high definition 4K, which, by the way, new 55-inch 4K TV, little late Christmas present to myself. That's coming in today. That'll be awfully exciting. Get to play FIFA 20 on it. We'll discuss FIFA 20 a little bit later in the show as well. But I've got a solution for fixing replay in all sports. I'll give you that solution on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Replay. Oh, man. It's been an absolute disaster, I think, in the Premier League One. And really across all sports, it's getting to a point where it makes it almost unbearable to watch, especially in the National Football League. Highly popular events being slowed down, a slow game already being slowed down by looking at a 3-minute replay. We've seen this in the National Basketball Association where it is a common play where the ball is knocked out of a player's hands, and for 3 minutes we are staring whether it brushed the absolute fingernail of LeBron James on the way out of bounds to take the ball away from the team trying for a last shot to win the game. That is ruining the spirit of the game, right? The spirit of the game, good defensive play. You knocked it out of bounds. Yes, it touched my finger last, but you knocked it out of bounds. Every court in America would give the ball to the team that knocked it out. But no, it scraped his finger. High definition replay showed it, so we flip it the other way. Technically, the call's right, but it messes up the spirit of it. And we see the same thing in VAR. Yes, technically, his armpit hair was in an offside position. But was he really offside? Was he really offside? I don't think so, right? It's about the spirit of the law. And we've seen proposed rule changes specifically for soccer. And I'm actually in favor of this. The more I play FIFA, the more matches that I've been watching recently, I've been really trying to think of this proposal that FIFA put out, potentially changing the offside rule to daylight needs to be seen between you and the defender to award offside. You have to be completely past the last defender, every part of your body past the last defender, and daylight shown between you. Probably make it easier on replay, VAR, make it easier to officiate not just at the higher levels, but all levels. It would add a little more offense, which we love offense. We love attacking the goal. And frankly, people are arguing that it's harder for defenders. I think it shows better defense when you're forced, instead of trying to offside trap every single play, which is frankly boring to see a defender step up. You've got to keep them on your hip a little bit more. And so faster defenders who are more physical will be valued highly. I think it makes defense even more exciting. So it's a rule change I'm in favor of. Even if that rule changes, though, I have a proposal for all sports. If I were dictator of the world, I'd enact it tomorrow. And I want to keep replay. I want you to be able to use all the angles you can use. I want calls to be right on the field. I'm in favor of all that. But this is what we need to do. We need to adjust it, because I'm okay with replay, but these decisions need to be made quicker, much quicker. So I propose a 30 to 45, if you're feeling frisky, second time limit for replays. As soon as the official sees the first image, he is on the clock. He has 30 to 45 seconds to make a decision. And if it's not clear enough to figure out then the call on the field stands. And you know what? As a fan, if you want to go back and replay and go, oh no, look, it touched, oh, it's so close. Have fun doing that and driving yourself crazy. Because if it's not clear enough after 30 seconds, then the spirit of the game suggests that the call on the field should stand. And I think this would solve a lot of issues. And maybe it causes some controversial situations, yes, but I think it solves a lot of issues. It gives officials a time frame that they know they need to make the decision. They'll make it a little more efficiently. They will look at angles that are more reliant. There will be less zooming and less looking and less head turning. And, oh, was that shoelace in an offside position? Well, let's zoom in on it. We've got all the time in the world, so let's figure this out. No, 30 to 45. If it's not clear, then you stick with the call on the field. I think this is a fair and amicable solution to this whole replay mess. So there are people who are in favor of getting rid of replay altogether. I am not in that camp because I think that there are some calls in all sports that are egregiously missed. And I love that we can fix those. And I think that has really improved sports, especially at a professional level, the fact that we can fix those egregious mistakes. Fixing those egregious mistakes is important, right? So I'm not in favor of stripping replay altogether. And I'm also not in favor of these guys that everything needs to be able to be reviewed. There needs to be a sky judge. You need to be able to stop the game at any time to review any potential missed call. I think that's ridiculous. I think you're trying to make something that is naturally imperfect, was meant to be imperfect. The spirit of it is imperfect, perfect. It just can't happen, right? And Ron White says it best in his stand-up special. Sometimes you can't fix stupid, right? There are certain things in life you just can't fix. You just can't fix some things. If your apartment is too narrow for a couch, you can't fit that couch in there, right? There's no twisting and turning and right way. You've got to measure that doorway. You've got to measure the hallway. You've got to know what you're getting into. It's something that has to be perfect, right? But replay is an imperfect thing. Officiating is an imperfect thing, and we can never get it perfect. There is no tape measure. There is no perfection. There is no getting every call right. That'll never happen. I don't care how far artificial intelligence advances. I don't care if there are robot referees. It can never be perfect. Because for something to be perfect at a computerized level, it must have predictable situations. And I see every single sporting event I've ever watched, in person, on TV, has a play I've never seen before. I don't think I've ever been to a sporting event where I didn't see at least one thing that I'd never seen before, one combination of events that I was like, oh, wow, I've never seen that. I really don't think I've ever been to a sporting event that didn't have at least something, some little thing that was different than every other sporting event of that sport I've seen before. It's an imperfect thing. You can never predict everything that's going to happen, ever. And there's no way to get computerized systems, especially in the sport of soccer. So let's stop trying to make an imperfect thing perfect. Let's make an imperfect thing tolerable, fun, fast-moving, easy to understand, easy to operate, easier on everybody. Make everybody's job easier, make the rules clear, establish a 30 to 45-second time limit on this replay. And I think that fixes all the problems. And I am 100% in favor of this daylight rule. Let me know on Twitter if you're in favor of it, at @MooreLukas, MooreLukas. Send me a DM, tweet me, whatever. And say, are you in favor of this new offside rule? Also, remember, please follow us on all social media, GSMC_soccer, the GSMC Soccer Facebook page. Important for you to follow, important for you to get all your soccer information and more. That's my solution for fixing replay in all sports. A match that really didn't need to be fixed was Atletico Madrid, FC Barcelona. Absolutely thrilling 3-2 match. We will dive into that matchup and what it means moving forward in La Liga next on the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Big welcome back into the GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lucas Moore. We just talked replay. We talked VAR. Not exactly fun stuff, but necessary stuff because this stuff is all over the headlines in world soccer. We covered injuries, Harry Kane, Christian Pulisic, a little earlier in the show. But Atletico Madrid versus FC Barcelona. 3-2 Atletico win. Scoreless first half, really thrilling second half. There was some physical altercations. It was a lot of fun. It was great fun. Awesome match to watch. And I hate seeing great matches like that in tournaments that I could really care less about. And, you know, I think some soccer media members try to force themselves to care about these things when I really don't think a cup featuring Spanish league teams in Saudi Arabia is something that I have to pay attention to. I only watched it because it's FC Barcelona, Atletico Madrid. I didn't watch it for the cup, right? There's certain things you watch because it's the tournament it is, and whatever the teams are. These cups are not that. You know, if it was Sevilla versus another mid-table Spanish side, I'm not sure I would have watched the match. I'm not sure I would have been drawn to it enough to try to watch it. But the fact it was Atletico, FC Barcelona, it draws you to that match. So I'm not sure these cups, if I can force myself to get excited for them all the time. But 3-2, thrilling match. I mean, just Messi had a beautiful goal. Messi through traffic. Oof, just so good. I mean, just so much fun to watch. High quality soccer. But what does this mean for La Liga moving forward? Because we look at the table right now, Barcelona, Real Madrid, both tied at 40 points. Atletico, 5 points behind. Now, this win from Atletico, I don't think it matters much for them, but I think it really shows us that this league is Real Madrid's to lose. FC Barcelona has been a little more successful this decade in La Liga, really a lot more successful than Real Madrid. They've won more league titles. Real Madrid has finished in second more times than not. But I think this year, for some reason, it feels like Zinedine Zidane's got this team rolling. I love Real Madrid. They're sitting in the final of this Saudi Arabian Cup. And I'm excited to see them in the final. I don't think the final matters for La Liga moving forward. But watching Barcelona in that match against Atletico Madrid, it never really clicked for them the way you wanted it to. And it always felt like Atletico was just a step in front, especially with a 3-2 finish. I preferred Atletico Madrid in that match, and that's not something you want to see with Barcelona at the top of the table. And I understand cup match, all these things, hard factors. But this match made me think at least 5% more, at least 10% more, that Barcelona is going to finish second in La Liga this year. But every match is going to be crucial when it kicks back off next week, right? Real Madrid-Sevilla, with Real Madrid and Barcelona tied at 40 points, and Sevilla sitting at fourth place at 35. Huge match. Every match will be crucial in this league moving forward. But I think Real Madrid's just going to pull through. I think they've got the better squad. I like their manager more. Real Madrid, to me, after watching FC Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, to me, is the favorite in La Liga. I think that was the biggest thing we learned from that match. And we also learned, because I had a little bit of slight on Wednesday, I hyped up Ronaldo. Great player. Unbelievable player. And I think Cristiano Ronaldo, if Juventus finds a way to win the Champions League, I think Cristiano Ronaldo becomes the greatest soccer player of all time in my mind if he can take Juventus to a Champions League title. That would solidify him to me as the greatest soccer player of all time. And maybe some would say that it's impossible to be the greatest of all time without a World Cup title on your mantle, but I think that that's unfair because the fact is Cristiano Ronaldo plays for Portugal, and that is a disadvantage from the jump. But Messi just fired back. I buried Messi a bit. I think Ronaldo had passed Messi completely, and I just loved watching him again. He's just, the ball looks like it sticks to his foot. It looks like it's mechanical. It's scary, right? And any of you that have ever attempted to play soccer at any sort of level understand how difficult it is to have touch like that. To be able to absorb the ball at any angle, any speed, understand where all the opponents are around you, absorb that touch, make a move into space, keep your eyes upfield, know where the goalkeeper is, move at top speed, finish all the same, and he does it better than anybody, right? I think Ronaldo moves in space better than Lionel Messi, but Ronaldo by no means moves better when there's no space. Messi's handling is just, I think it's the greatest ball handles of all time. I think his touch, his handling ability with both feet, it's unbelievable footwork. It's unbelievable. And I wanted to shout out Messi because it felt like I was 100% carrying the team Cristiano Ronaldo flag on Wednesday's podcast. And then Messi comes out with that incredible match, with an incredible goal. And, you know, I even if Barcelona's beat out this year, Messi is Messi. It's hard to really criticize him, no matter how poorly he performs, or sometimes his team poorly performs, or even if he doesn't pick up a World Cup title. I'm not sure his attitude is perfect for being an all-time great, maybe. But he's one of the 4 greatest players that's ever lived. And he proved it again, time and time again, with just incredible goals, incredible touch. I've never really seen soccer played like that at that level, in that type of space. It's just truly incredible to watch from Lionel Messi. On the other side of the break, we've got a fun segment to dive into. This is something that I want to do every once in a while. I'm a big FIFA 20 guy. I'm a big video game guy. I'll explain this FIFA 20 career mode. This is a fun segment. We'll dive into it probably every other week and try to update you. But I've got a fun FIFA storyline, a FIFA career that we will dive into, and I will give you all the details, the backstory, everything, because we love playing with a lot of detail. And we'll have that on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Talked Atletico Madrid, FC Barcelona, that excellent match from this week. I think that the match, if it showed me anything, which it might have showed me 5% of something, it showed me that I think Real Madrid will win the La Liga this year. That remains to be seen. 40 points tied at the top for both teams. We will see moving forward in the Premier League. But to me, just that loss from FC Barcelona makes me feel a little more comfortable for Real Madrid moving forward. Give us a follow on all the social medias, Facebook, GSMC Soccer page, like it, follow, comment on stuff. Be critical. I don't care. Just engage. We love when you engage. Twitter as well, at GSMC_soccer. Give us a follow. And my personal Twitter, at @MoreLucas. For more than just soccer news, for sports all around the sports world, the place to follow. Now, what I want to dive into, and I've always wanted to do this on a podcast, and I've never been able to. It's never really made sense. But in this little segment, we get 10, 15 minutes at the end of every show. We can have fun. We can do some rankings. And this is a consistent segment that I want to put here at the end of the show. FIFA 20, I think it's a great game. I know the reviews weren't necessarily so high on it, but I really enjoy playing the game. It looks beautiful. I love the career mode. I love all those things in it. And my best friend in the world, Max McDoulan, we always play video games together, right? And maybe we'll have Max on a future podcast. But we do this career mode in all these things. We have Madden franchises in year 2037, 2038, with Super Bowls for both of us and bad seasons and great seasons and trades and coaching changes. And the thing we like to emphasize when we do these career modes is realism. So obviously I studied broadcast journalism at Ohio University, and Max did as well. And so the thing that we love most about sports is the stories. Without stories, there are no sports. And I want to take you back to when sports really became popular, specifically in the United States. And that was when college football became popular because of the writings of Grantland Rice. So Grantland Rice was a little bit of an embellisher, right? He liked to emphasize things, over-exaggerate things, create storylines, create good guys, bad guys, all those things. But when he started doing that, his columns became unbelievably popular. And because his columns were popular, the sports became more popular. He once described the Notre Dame backfield as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? They were all less than 170 pounds. Not exactly the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but that's how he described them, right? The storylines. The stories are what carry sports. And what's so beautiful about our modern video games is that these games have gotten so good, so real, that if you just adjust the settings a little bit here, a little bit there, take out the video game-esque aspects of some of them, not only can you have really realistic games where you're playing and the games are really realistic, but you can have really realistic seasons and really realistic simulations. You just have to put limits on yourself. So Max and I, we've decided we're going to do a new manager career in FIFA 20. We started it today. And the new career, we're going to start with, so here's the storyline. The manager's name is JT Rose. JT Rose grew up in the United Kingdom at an Air Force base near Northampton. Okay? His father was an American Air Force pilot. So he's a blue blood American, but also has British citizenship because that's where he was born. So we've got a nice little, so basically we're trying to set up his eventual move into the Premier League as a natural storyline because we know that the British would probably never hire a full-blooded American to coach one of their teams. It's something that I don't ever see happening. And that's just because they're still ticked off about the revolution. And I get that. I understand, right? That's a tough loss to swallow. It's going to take at least 400 years for you to get over it, or the fall of the American Empire, which might be before that 400-year point. But whatever one of those comes first, they'll maybe finally get over it and hire an American in the Premier League to run. Anyway, that's why we do the British aspect of it, right? So we have this British American, JT Rose. His storyline was at 18, he played in the youth academies in Britain and around Northampton, whatever, great. Gets a scholarship to go play in the United States in Cincinnati, where his family is from, the Ohio area originally. He's got family in Cincinnati, some old friends maybe in Cincinnati from when he's visited the United States. So he goes to the University of Cincinnati, takes them to their first ever NCAA tournament appearance. Again, this is all fake storylines, but we're setting it up, right? Because this will be exciting as we move forward. So anyway, he's at the University of Cincinnati, does well, goes back to Northampton, plays at Northampton, because remember, there's a League Two club in Northampton. So this fake player, JT Rose, plays for them. Plays for them for about 7 years, does great, earns a captaincy. They never really advance, but he's popular among the fans. Gets to be an assistant coach there until the age of 35. Then at 35, he's offered the head coaching job at the University of Cincinnati, flies back over the pond, goes to the United States. So now he's at UFC, takes them to 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments, including winning 2 matches in the 3rd NCAA tournament appearance, and that gets them hired for the inaugural season of FC Cincinnati, which already is going way better than the inaugural season of the real FC Cincinnati, which might have been the worst team in American sports this year, which is just awful to say, just horrible. They had, 24 points this season? Unbelievable low amount of points, 24 points. So we took over FC Cincinnati, and that's where we start in the game. We are managing FC Cincinnati with JT Rose at 38 years old. So this is where the career starts at the beginning of 2019. I'm not going to go through each individual player that we bought, but basically our goal right now, because FC Cincinnati's expectations for management is super low, understandably, because they were horrible, right? The only thing we need to make sure is we have a little bit of money after. But we've signed some really good youth players. We've got a future star in there. We've spent a lot of money on the youth academies, which I'm excited about. A lot of money on the youth academies. We've got some great young talent coming up. Should be ready in a couple years. And we just made a couple really big signings as the transfer window opened midway through the season. We're running a 4-3-3 attack. I want to simulate essentially pressing football. We want to press high on heavy touches. We take advantage of that. We want to be fast. We want to be really fast with the wingers and the strikers. We want to be fast up top. We want a defense that forces people to try to attempt crosses. We're going to force people to the corners. We're going to have really good aerial defenders. That is going to be JT Rose's style, and we will always fit our roster to build that. So we picked the best players that FC Cincinnati currently had. We added 1 free agent. We added 1 transfer to fit more of the style. And Ferreira, one of the transfers, I don't have his actual name. I think it's Kevin Ferreira. Ferreira, as the center mid, was just excellent. A really beautiful, excellent player. Broke his tibia in practice. Doesn't matter, though, because FC Cincinnati continues to make its way into the playoffs. A beautiful run. Excellent to watch. It's exciting stuff. So where we're sitting now with the FIFA franchise, FC Cincinnati currently is mid of the table Eastern Conference as at mid of the playoffs. So they're in 3rd or 4th place. Just got bounced from the U.S. Open Cup, a bad 4-1 loss to Houston Dynamo. Don't really know what happened there, right? But, it happens. Things happen. And FC Cincinnati, competitive in the MLS, which is something I hope to be saying when we start previewing the MLS come March. But FC Cincinnati, competitive at the top, just got bounced from the U.S. Open. Hopefully a home playoff match. I think that's our goal for this season. Make the playoffs, get a home playoff match. That'd be excellent. And then MLS champions a year from now. And then we'll see if we can move in the lower levels of the Premier League and keep building the career from there. That's the FIFA 20 update. That's why I love playing video games. I love that they help build some storylines in sports, and you can make your own storylines. Hopefully you guys are interested in that. I'll keep updating it with shorter and shorter segments week in and week out. But that'll do it for us today. I really hope you enjoyed the show. We dove into the Premier League. We dove into VAR. We dove into Atletico Madrid versus FC Barcelona. It's an exciting weekend of soccer Premier League action in full swing. And then on Monday, we'll recap the most exciting moments of that action. I'm sure there'll be some transfer news and a bunch of other things in the world of soccer after the weekend. Remember, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Do all those excellent things that help us out. Follow us on Facebook. Just do all those great things. Follow us on Twitter, me on Twitter, at @morelucas. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by, of course, the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, write a nice review, always helps us, and follow us on Facebook, as I've said, Twitter, and Doug Graham, which I don't really mention the Instagram much. I'm not really all into Instagram, but if you're into Instagram, we're into Instagram as well. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We will see you on Monday. I'm going to pick Liverpool 3-1 against Tottenham. I know I hyped up a potential upset there, but I think Liverpool will be successful and victorious in the biggest Premier League match and probably the biggest match in the world of soccer over the weekend. We'll see you next time. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.